Hello, everybody. You have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello, everybody. How you doing today? I've just been watching The Staircase for the second time. I know I've been having some people that were asking me, they wanted me to give my 2 cents and weigh in on The Staircase. They wanted to hear my thoughts about it and stuff. So this will be an early kind of video about my thoughts on The Staircase. Because, yes, I've watched it twice, but I need to watch it a few more times still, absorb some more things in it. But I'll tell you what, the thing that sticks with me watching The Staircase is just how sad the situation is. I mean, it's like, Kathleen Peterson and Michael Peterson had, by all accounts, what would seem to be this kind of idyllic life. They seemed very much in love. Everybody around them attests to how in love they were, and how how just into each other they were, and how much they enjoyed each other's company. I mean, it's overflowing before the trial and before all before all of Durham County and it's relying on the ridiculous science of Deaver and stirring up everything that it stirred up. There was nothing but pleasant recollections of Kathleen and Michael. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible that Michael just lost his mind and did what he did. I'm just saying that by all accounts that there was this very pleasant life there on this in this mansion, on this property in Durham, North Carolina, and that the kids were happy, and they seem pretty well adjusted. These kids seem happy and well adjusted. Watching this documentary, I actually find myself liking them kind of a lot. I mean, they seem, even though they come from the upper crust and stuff, they seem kind of down to earth. They seem fairly approachable. They seem just like likable kids. And so that Kathleen and Michael had to be doing something right, because they raised these kids that were fairly good kids. And so you just know that there was this really, really nice life going on prior to this incident. And that's the part that I think is just the most sad about it. It kind of stays with me the whole time I'm watching The Staircase, and as it's going through all the various evidence and the various things that happened in the course of the prosecution of the case and everything. It's just a very, very just a sad kind of thought that stays in the back of my mind about just how terrible this is. Clearly, when you listen to Kathleen's blood daughter talk, which at the time was right when this happened, before Durham County started getting Deaver in and trumping up all their little pseudoscience, whatever you want to call it, to come after Mike Peterson, and in doing that, then tainted public opinion, and then got everybody thinking that he was the bad guy, that he killed her, and that suddenly changed. All these stories that people were telling about what a great relationship, well, suddenly, like Kathleen's daughter, Kathleen's sisters, were suddenly now talking about what a horrible man he was. I will just point out that before Durham did what it did, everybody was talking about what a great relationship they had. In fact, her own daughter was talking about how it was because of Michael that her mother, who was basically crying every night, she remembers listening to her mom crying every night after her own father left her mom. And she just remembers how very sad and her mom was crying and all these things. But it was Michael that came along and swooped her off her feet and picked her back up and put her back on her feet and provided her with the path to happiness again, because she became very happy. And you can tell, like I said, by all accounts, prior to Durham County launching this whole thing against Michael, all accounts talk about what a great relationship they had. These kids seemed just like great kids. I mean, you just know there had to be a pretty healthy atmosphere there in that house. Just sad, really. It's just sad. Having said that, I will say this. Michael Peterson strikes me as an odd bird. As an odd duck, however you want to look at it. But he definitely, some things about him kind of strike me as a little bit odd. I think a little bit by nature is a little bit kind of goofy, which is cool. Don't hold that against him, obviously. I've known some goofy people in my life, and they're probably some of the funniest people I've ever met. But the thing about him, he's a little goofy, but then there's the thing, like, whenever, like, they'll be talking about serious court things or case, things with like, for instance, David Rudolph, his lawyer, and he'll be talking about, like, some case stuff or whatever with him, and they'll say, oh, well, the prosecution's going to be doing this or doing that or whatever. They're going to be bringing in so-and-so who says that he talked to you about having intercourse and blah, blah, blah. Basically talking about the same-sex extramarital thing that Michael was into. And so when that gets brought up, he, like, laughs, like, about how ridiculous it is and stuff like that. Like, and he does that kind of a lot in this documentary. Whenever something like that, and it's a serious thing, but it gets brought up, and, like, he just laughs, like he's trying to. I get he's trying to say that it's ridiculous, but it's just odd to me that the way that he so often reacted with, like, belly laugh, in response to some of these things, just kind of bugged me. But that doesn't mean he's guilty. We don't judge people are guilty just because we don't like something about them, as we've all learned in the Avery case. And obviously the Averys weren't liked. They were seen a certain way there in Manitowoc, and mainly everybody was able to jump on the guilty train there because people perceive the Averys as, bad people or unsavory people or whatever it is that they believe about the Averys, and so it makes them easier to victimize them. Well, we can't be doing that here. So I may have a little bit of an issue with the inappropriate laughter of Michael Peterson, but that certainly doesn't mean he's guilty. I certainly have not made a decision fully as to whether or not I believe that Michael Peterson is guilty. I think as you're going to see, I'm going to point out in some of the evidence I'm going to show today, some of the photos and stuff, and what I'm going to talk about, that I think at this point in time, I'm kind of thinking it's unlikely that he actually put his hand to it, that he actually did anything. That may change, obviously, as I watch more and review more about this. But, well, I'll give you my main reason here in this video today why I'm currently leaning towards the fact that he really may not have done this. That it may have been just a horrible, horrible accident. But like I said, my mind is still open on this. I'm not completely convinced about anything when it comes to Michael Peterson. And like I said, that may be because of the fact that I found his demeanor to be a little bit alarming in certain areas. Okay, so what I'm going to move into now is I want to talk about Dr. Lee. Some of you may know he's been in a lot of different crime shows about a lot of different cases. He's kind of a top leading forensic expert. And you may recognize he's a Chinese guy. He has a very thick accent. In fact, you remember in the staircase that some of the sample juries they were bringing in, or the test juries that they were bringing in to kind of figure out how people would react to certain things in the case, the test juries kept saying that when he would talk, they just weren't listening because he was hard to understand, and so they would just zone out, and basically they couldn't tell whoever was examining them after they listened to a piece of evidence or a piece of testimony or something. They couldn't even tell the person asking questions about what had been said. They couldn't even tell them what the guy said because and it's in the South too, which makes sense to me. But down in the South, they just didn't. His accent and everything, it just made him difficult to understand. And they just a lot of the test jurors, basically, were just not listening to what he said because, the way they described it is that he was hard to understand. But I happen to understand Dr. Lee just fine, and I have the same issue that he has. If this blowpoke was used, as they say, the blood that came off of it should have gone higher than what our head level would be. Should have gone higher. It should have been getting flipped up. It should have been all over a ceiling, high on the walls. It shouldn't have just stopped at where head level is. That's not realistic. It should, like I said, when he brought if he was hitting her on the head with that blowpoke, when he was after he hits her and creates blood and blood gets on the blowpoke, when he comes back up with it, blood's gonna fly off of it. That's gonna happen. It's gonna fly up. It's gonna go high up on the walls, ceiling, and it's gonna go high on the walls behind as well. Right? So Dr. Lee has said he went and he inspected all high up on the walls and on the ceiling very closely, and he saw no spatter. Now, I did hear in the documentary the district attorney or the lawyer that they had take over for the case here, when David Rudolph was, 8 years later, when David Rudolph was coming in there to discredit Devers and all that sort of stuff, right? That district attorney, for some reason, said that there was blood. She's the only one that I saw say there was blood there, but she's the only one. And I specifically heard Dr. Lee say that he went over the high up on the walls and the ceiling, looking very closely, specifically because he was looking for that spatter that indicates somebody was bringing that blowpoke up and down and up and down, and that the stream of blood that was being created every time it came down on her head, if this is what happened, supposedly, that blood would then get on the blowpoke and then spray up on the ceiling and high up on the walls. Okay, so what I'm going to show you right now is a picture of that staircase, and you're going to see that there's no blood high up on the walls. And granted, this picture is a little bit far away, but like I said, you have Dr. Lee who tells you he went and looked very, very closely, very, very scrupulously, and he found no spatter high up on the walls or on the ceiling. So I don't know what the DA was playing at when David Rudolph was initiating post-trial relief or post-conviction relief, when she was suggesting that there was blood on the ceiling, when there's no account of that. In fact, there is the exact account of Dr. Lee that proves the exact opposite. So we'll take a look at that picture right now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about a few other things. Okay, so mainly I just want to point out how there is no spatter that you see anywhere on this white or anywhere up high on these walls. And like I said, Dr. Lee made it a point to go and scrupulously inspect there and up high and everything, and it's just not there. You can tell it's all down here. It's all just down around the floor area. That's kind of telling to me. That the blood clearly shows up on that white. I mean, there's nothing up here. So, yeah, it's just, to me, there's no evidence that this blowpoke was used, and that makes it hard for me to believe that he was beating her with it. All right, so now I'm going to go into my reasons why it really does appear to me that Kathleen may have just accidentally fallen on these stairs. She had a pretty high blood alcohol content, or BAC, as they call it. She had a pretty high blood alcohol content. I believe she was on some kind of medication that is particularly intoxicating, especially when it mixes with alcohol, as most of those types of things, those types of, medications are. So it's possible that she just wasn't as sure-footed and that she did fall on the staircase. And the reason why I believe that is because all the blood is down low. All of the blood is, 90% of the blood is all within a foot of the floor, pretty much. Yeah, there's some that go a little higher, But I believe that may be because she was struggling. She clearly tried to get up. She clearly fell and then got up. She had blood on the bottom of her feet, so she was walking in her own blood. So she was bleeding pretty bad. And if she was bleeding that badly, she could have easily been like when blood was running near her mouth because she didn't like that taste or whatever it was. She could have been going and spraying, drops of blood around, and that could explain why some of the drops are higher up. That's, and then upon getting back up and getting, the blood on her feet again, and it was so much of it that she slipped. So it's entirely possible, that this really was just a horrific accident, and she really just fell in this kind of precarious stairway. And like I say, and the only reason I say that kind of washes for me is because, like I said, all the blood is down low. Like she would have been laying down and coming to after the first fall, going because there's blood and or whatever, and she's pawing at the wall a little bit, which makes it look like the supposed cleanup. She might have been like pawing at the wall for stability as she was getting up, and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I see making sense a little bit here. So we'll go ahead and move into some pictures here, and we'll come on back. So this is that blood at the bottom of the stairwell there, up close, and yeah, you can see it looks like she may have come down and hit over on this piece of molding that's up here, because it has kind of two bumps that stick out that are about the same distance apart as the two cuts that we see, or what the contusions on the back of her head where the skin breaks, kind of equidistant. So I'll try and get a picture of that molding up here in a minute. And then she was on this floor here and then started to wake up and was maybe coughing on this wall, was putting her hands on this wall, trying to get stability, trying to get up, and eventually did get back to her feet. But all this blood you can see is here on these steps. She was walking in that and then slips again, and then potentially hits her head when she falls back after slipping on this step, or maybe even the step below it. And the reason why I say that is because the way her body is found, the way it's found lying eventually, when they take the crime scene photos, and which we'll show you now. We'll say the body will be blocked out. It's not, I'm not looking to be gruesome here. So, but we're going to see kind of the way the body was lying. I'm going to explain why I think it makes sense that she fell backwards and hit her head again. So my kind of thinking here is that she did fall, and she fell, and right here there's this molding sticks out kind of, and then there's the wall. So there's like a corner. So there's like a corner right here, right? So if she fell back and one side of her head hit that corner, that would explain one of the contusions on the back of her head. And then the other side of her, and if the other side of the back of her head slammed against the wall, that could have possibly opened up the other. This is hard plaster, right? I heard it said in the documentary that this is plaster, not drywall. Plaster is far less yielding. It's very hard. It's almost like cement. It's a little more brittle than cement, but it's almost like cement. It's very, very hard. So it's possible she came back, she hit here somewhere, her head or whatever, on here, and that caused those two cuts on the back of her head. And then she was laying here, and then started to come to before the blood loss got too bad, before it got too much where she would just lose consciousness, and got up and tried to walk, and upon walking, walked out this doorway and slipped in the pool of blood and fell back, and her head hit again on these steps, causing the third part that's kind of in the middle on top of her head, the third abrasion on the back of her head. That's kind of what I'm thinking happened here. Because like I said, if there was foul play, if there was somebody in here beating her and hitting her and whatever they were swinging and hitting her with should have left evidence everywhere. You should see the spatter from it. So yeah, that's kind of why I think this may have just been a tragic accident. But like I said, I'm still having an open mind about this. I still am not 100% certain about Michael Peterson. So this is kind of what I was talking about. When she fell back the first time, she may have hit the corner of that molding or whatever here and opened up this, and then when her back of her head slammed against the plaster wall as she continued to fall back, it could have caused this one. And then that would have had her, woozy, would have probably, had her knocked out for a minute. But she may have come to in about 45 seconds or so, and before the blood loss got too bad, and got up and tried to get up and walk out that doorway or whatever, it slipped in the blood again and fell back on one of the steps, causing this one. To me, it's judging by the fact that all the blood is all so low on the walls. This is kind of what looks like makes sense to me the most at the moment. But like I said, I have an open mind, and I'll be continuing to scrutinize this case a bit. And this is basically how Kathleen was found. And as I said, it falls in line with what I think happened, because I believe she might have gotten up after the first time, came down here through here, or gotten up and was on these steps, came down, slipped on her blood that was clearly on her feet, that you could see on her feet, and slipped again. The other thing I want to point out here, folks, you don't see any blood on any of this white out here. There's no blood anywhere. All of everything all of it is all contained down in this lower stairway. There's a little bit on the floor around her, like from her feet, obviously, and that sort of stuff. But it looks to me like she was coming out this door and slipped and fell back again, and probably conked her head on one of these stairs again, because she would have been in pretty serious shape. Like bad, kind of bad shape. She would have been, dazed from the first fall, pretty high blood alcohol content, whatever medication was interacting with that alcohol. She may have been having some serious struggles, and that's probably why she fell the second time, and then possibly hit her head again, as I'm suggesting. It's like I said, the fact that we don't see any of this carnage anywhere, any evidence of it on any of the walls out of the stairway, really kind of tells me that this was all taking place in the stairway. And once again, if there was somebody hitting her, beating her with something, doing something to her, we would see cast-off stains somewhere out here, and that sort of thing, which we don't see. And because it's so all contained at the bottom of the stairway so well, leads me to believe that this was just an accident, and that she accidentally fell, and that blood is from her pawing at the wall, trying to get her balance to get up again, and that sort of thing like that. It's just really the way it strikes me. Okay, so that's basically my initial video about the staircase here, where I essentially just wanted to look at the actual scene, and analyze the scene, and just note it as it is and what it is, and like I say, pointing out the fact that blood is not going up very high on the walls. It's because of that, it's hard for me to believe somebody was in there hitting her with anything or anything like that. Really, with it all being as low as it is on the walls, like she was probably trying to get up and get stability on that wall. That's really what it looks like to me. So that's mainly what I wanted to cover today. Obviously, I'll be doing another video or two probably about this, the staircase, in which case the next video I'm going to probably be going into all the shady stuff that Durham County was doing in regards to this case, whether or not they really should have been doing it. There's a lot of questions here, but there's a lot of shady things that the county was pulling in this case that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, really. It kind of sucks for me, because when I used to think of Durham in the past, before I watched The Staircase, I always thought of Bull Durham, the movie with Kevin Costner and Susan Sarandon, with Susan Sarandon being all hot, and the minor league pitcher Nuke, played by Tim Robbins, Kevin Costner. Great movie, and that was always what I thought of when I would think of, or when I hear of Durham. But now I'm going to also have that commingled effect of Bull Durham with The Staircase, which is You know, probably not ideal, because it used to be a very, very, very pleasant memory of a very great movie, and now it's going to be mixed in with the gruesomeness of this whole thing. And what would appear to be pretty massive, or pretty grievous misconduct, at least on Deaver's part. And personally, I'm not really willing to let Hardin off the hook that easily. I think Hardin had an idea that some of Deaver's science may have been flawed. I think Hardin was basically kind of just trying to operate under the don't ask, don't tell. That's why the defense had never received certain documents that Devers had created and things like that. So I'm personally not willing to let Hardin off the hook, but he's now a judge, Superior Court judge now or whatever. Yeah, it's our system is not about getting it right. Our system is about chasing convictions. As sad as that is, that's what it really is. And the fact that Hardin goes on to become a Superior Court judge after, making a complete pig's ear of this. I mean, yeah, it was a tragic thing for the family of Kathleen Peterson, to include her own children, and even Michael. The one thing I can say about Michael is he seems a little goofy. Yeah, he laughs inappropriately at certain things. But when I would see him reacting to pictures of Kathleen and things like that, I was struck with genuine, love and admiration that he felt for her. Regardless of whatever his extracurricular activities were, I truly do believe he loved her and cared about her. And so that's where I stand at the moment. Obviously, as I continue to review things and see things and everything, my opinion could change. We'll have to see where it goes. But like I said, the next video is going to probably be dealing mainly with just the kind of mess that Durham County made of this case, and whether or not they should have ever pursued it really in the first place at all. Is kind of going to be one of the main questions I'm going to have there. So, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.